Good morning and welcome to Daily Devotions with Pastor Joe. I'm Pastor Joe. Today we're going back to the book of Judges, chapter 14, where we're looking into Samson's life again. Last week we spoke a little bit about the background of where Samson came from and how God had raised him up to this place as a Nazirite, destined to be the next judge to deliver Israel partially and begin the deliverance of Israel from the Philistines. Now, we note, and we're going to want to keep track of what a Nazirite was supposed to do with a Nazirite's vow as we go through the story here of Samson, because a Nazirite was to never cut their hair, but instead to keep it long all the days of their vow. The Nazirite was supposed to not touch dead and unclean things, and to not touch or consume anything that had come from the vine. So no grapes, no tomatoes, things of that sort. And so with that in mind, we're going down through Samson's marriage here, where Samson is used by God to begin the deliverance from the Philistines. So it says here in Judges 14:1, "And Samson went down to Timnath, and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up, and told his father and his mother, and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife." Or in other words, wow, there was a knockout down there. I won her. And then his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, or among all my people, that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said unto his father, Get her for me, for she pleaseth me well. But his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord that he sought an occasion against the Philistines. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. And I'd like to just note here, sometimes we say to ourselves, well, I made some mistakes in my life, I dated the wrong people, did this or that. And we look at that and we say, I made some big mistakes in my life. And then once in a while we really should look at it and say, God was trying to teach me something during that time frame. Maybe teach me something about how to treat somebody the right way, or teach me not to do certain things, or teach me something so that when I get married, I would be able to have a better relationship with the spouse that he has chosen for me. Maybe, just maybe. So, Samson was being used by God here for a very specific purpose, so that the Philistines could begin to lose their grip, lose their hold over Israel. And Samson was going to use this as an intervention there. So in verse 5, it says, Then went Samson down, and his father and his mother, to Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him. That'd be a scary sight for any of us. A young lion comes roaring in and ready to strike and to kill. But it says, And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he rent him, as he would have rent a kid or small goat. And he had nothing in his hands, but he told it not his father or his mother what he had done. Or in other words, he got a hold of this lion and pulled it apart, which is pretty insane to think about. And he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. And he took thereof in his hands, and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat. But he told not them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. And so here's the first place where we see Samson beginning to break or to turn against his vows to be a Nazirite. Now, notably, he did not choose first to be a Nazirite. God chose him to be a Nazirite. But he's going against the vows of what make you a Nazirite. And God was giving it to him more not as a vow, but as a promise that if you keep this Nazirite vow, I will be with you and keep you strong to defeat the Philistines. And so really, he's right now turning against and testing the waters of what God will put up with before he fails from God completely. And so he didn't tell them where they had gotten it. He didn't tell them it came from a lion's dead body, which to me, I would not really care for the idea of eating honey out of a lion's body no matter what. So his father went down unto the woman, and Samson made there a feast, for so used the young men to do. Yep, that's right. The young men used to make a feast whenever they wanted to court a lady. And it came to pass when they saw him that they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Samson said unto them, I will now put forth a riddle unto you. If ye can certainly declare it me within the 7 days of the feast, and find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 change of garments. But if ye cannot declare it me, then shall ye give me 30 sheets and 30 change of garments. And they said unto him, Put forth thy riddle, that we may hear it. And he said unto them, Out of the eater came forth meat, out of the strong came forth sweetness. And they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. They couldn't figure it out. Of course not. It was an inside joke. It was a thing that only Samson really knew and understood. So it was very unfair and wrong on Samson's part to do this in the first place. But once again, the Lord is using things in the background. He's using Samson's, shall we say, ornery side to get to the Philistines. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they said unto Samson's wife, the woman who was marrying Samson, and at the end of the 7 days they were going to go in with each other and become husband and wife. It says that they said unto Samson's wife, Entice thy husband, that he may declare unto us the riddle, lest we burn thee and thy father's house with fire. Have ye called us to take that we have? Is it not so? And Samson's wife wept before him, and said, Thou dost but hate me, and lovest me not. Thou hast but put forth a riddle unto the children of my people, and hast not told it me. And he said unto her, Behold, I have not told it my father nor my mother, and shall I tell it thee? Or in other words, he said, Hey, this is a secret my mom and dad don't even know. Why would I tell you? After all, she's not yet married to him. It's the process, the 7-day process here. And she wept before him the 7 days, while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the 7th day that he told her, because she lay sore upon him. And she told the riddle to the children of her people. An unfaithful companion, an unfaithful spouse here that Samson's wife is. 7 days she's bawling her eyes out and crying for the answer to this riddle, just so she can turn on him, when really she should have just said, Hey, Samson, here's my problem, here's what's going on in my life, I need help. And he would have went and tore those guys apart, but no, instead, she's going to cause a lot more trouble than she's worth. So she cries for 7 days, and he got sick of hearing her cry, and he said, Fine, here's the riddle, here's the answer to it. And the man of the city said unto him on the 7th day, before the sun went out, What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? And he said unto them, If ye had not plowed with my heifer, ye had not found out my riddle. Or in other words, if you hadn't done the work through my wife, you wouldn't have found out the riddle. And I find it very interesting that he chose to call his wife a heifer, but you understand he's upset at this moment. And so he knows he's on to them. He knows that she's the one who gave the answer to them. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Or in other words, he got very angry, and God gave him strength. And he went down to Ashkelon and slew 30 men of them, took their spoil, and gave change of garments unto them which expounded the riddle. And his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. So when he was done, he was so upset, he killed 30 men, brought the clothes back and threw them at the guy's feet, and then went home to cool down. But then it says, But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as a friend. So his best man took the wife. And we'll go ahead and stop there. We don't want to jump into 15 just yet. There's so much more. But really, a couple of things just really stood out to me. Like I had said, sometimes our relationships we think are an accident or a mistake, or we really shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't have had that relationship, that friendship, whatever it might be. Sometimes God brings those friendships, those relationships into our lives, and as long as we're still faithful to Him, I'm not talking going into sin, but as long as we're faithful, those relationships can sometimes be excellent growing times for us. As Christians, we can learn great things about the Lord, great things about who we are and what we want in a spouse. and what God has intended for us and what works and what doesn't work in our lives. How to communicate better. That's one thing that can definitely be a growing point throughout multiple relationships, whether it's just friendships or other relationships. And so with that in mind, Samson here, whenever it says that he was in love with this girl who he obviously wasn't meant to marry, wasn't even permitted to marry under the Jewish law, really, it was because God wanted to use this relationship for a purpose in Samson's life. Now, that doesn't mean every one of your purposes, every one of your relationships has a purpose. Sometimes we do make mistakes, and we can't blame those on God. We have to blame those on ourselves. But in this particular instance, this relationship, it was kind of on God. God made her beautiful for his sake and made him see her and want her. The lion, he shouldn't have touched that lion. That was definitely a breaking of the Nazirite vow, which didn't permit you to touch any dead or unclean things. Eating the honey out of it, that's disgusting. He also made a very foolish bet against these men, and he wasn't fair about it either. So there's a couple things we could definitely learn. We need to be more fair with things and less extreme. We should not make a wager against something that is more than what we have, as Samson did here. We can also learn that there are times where your spouse can become a sore thorn if they're not living the way they should and being 100% honest, open, and clear with you. In our relationships, we should be completely clear with one another, and our communication should be without any lacking, should be as perfect as we can make it, so that we can be certain that that we're communicating on a level that we both understand. Now, right here, Samson made his choices up to this point. This woman made the wrong choice. Instead of communicating with her husband and saying, this is my problem, she tried to skirt around the issue. And women that I've met in my life, I've known a couple that do this and others who don't. I don't know a lot of men personally who do this, that are kind of sly about the way they do something, you know what I'm saying? Where they're looking for an answer. But I think, well, there might be one. But it's something that we've got to be careful of in our relationships. My wife and I have been working really hard to keep our communication lines open, and that's something important to do. If you don't communicate well, the relationship breaks down. So if you're married or dating, make sure to keep those communication lines wide open to where you all feel good and comfortable about talking to each other and telling each other your problems and your woes. Because if you don't, then there is a real serious risk of something going wrong that you wouldn't have to have go wrong if you would just communicate with one another. One last thing. Be careful who you leave your spouse with. Right there at the end, and his father actually tells him that he's the one who chose to give the wife to the companion, to the friend. Be careful who you pal around with. Be careful who you leave your spouse alone with, because it's dangerous. But all of those are just really good lessons that you can pull out of this chapter. If you have any others that you noticed or anything else that you're interested in this chapter or a testimony you want to give, drop into the comment section down below and leave that. I'll be sure to read it. I've kept up on reading everyone so far. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend or on social media. There is social media links down in the description below to Facebook and Twitter and several other things. So check that out. I hope you have a wonderful day in the Lord. Stay close to Him. Obey His Spirit no matter where He's leading, what He's telling you to do. Follow Him. He'll never lead you wrong. God bless. Have a wonderful day in the Lord. I'll see you tomorrow on another Daily Devotions with Pastor Joe.